Thank you very much, Pádraig. As a proud woman from the Royal County, it's always a pleasure to be here in the Kingdom, and I'll say no more about that. Díomh ar maidin tá anátha orm a bheith anseo ag mo céad comhgáil muintóirí mar ara idicus. Bhuailm buíochas a gabhail leis an uachtarán Donald Cremin, agus rúnaí generálta Kieran Christie as an bhailte mhór a fuair uamh go léir. Good afternoon to all of you. It is my absolute pleasure to join you this evening for your conference and indeed my first convention as Minister for Education. I want to start by sincerely thanking and acknowledging your President, Donald Cremin, and wishing him every success in the time ahead, and indeed to thank your General Secretary, Kieran Christie. Thank you for the kind invitation to join you here this afternoon, but also thank you for your engagement to date. It's 12 weeks since I was appointed, or around 12 weeks since I was appointed Minister for Education, and I've had the pleasure and the opportunity to meet with your leadership team on a number of occasions to date, and I just want to thank them for the very sincere and the very warm engagement during that time, and I welcome the opportunity not just to be here to set out my priorities and my ambitions and my goals as Minister for Education, but importantly to listen to your priorities, to your goals, your ambitions, and the challenges that you face. And I think what's very clear to me, our priorities are the same. Our goal and our ambition is the same. How do we make sure that we do everything possible to support our young people to achieve their full potential? That's why we're here. And I think there is certainly more that unites us than divides us in the issues that we've outlined. The introduction, as you've mentioned, of Donna O'Malley of free second-level education in Ireland back in the 60s really was absolutely transformational for our country. The impact on our economy, the impact on our society. It was the foundation of the modern Ireland that was built and that we live in today. And the quality of teaching, the learning of our schools have helped to make Ireland a leader across so many different areas, in so many different fields, including whether it's science, in culture, and enterprise, in public services. And my ambition as Minister for Education in the time ahead is to build on those many strengths in our Irish education system, build on the great value placed on our education in Ireland, the high quality of our teachers and the high status of the profession, but also that partnership approach in policy development, listening to all of the voices within our school community, because every single voice matters. Education is something that has the ability to ignite something in all of us, and I'll be very honest, in the last 12 weeks alone, it has ignited something in me. I said this in the very first address that I gave, but I'm absolutely delighted to be in this role, and I'm really excited to be working with so many people who are so passionate about what they do. Every single person that I've met, whether it's principals, teachers, special education teachers, SNAs, every member within our school community, you are passionate about the work that you do because education matters. Education has the ability to break down barriers. It has the ability to lift people out of poverty, out of disadvantage. It's education that will support every young person to achieve their potential. And as I said, that's why we're here. And certainly as a mum of two young boys, as Pádraig has mentioned, two boys who will be going to school in the coming years, I want the best for them, not just in primary school, but as they go in to secondary education and beyond. And that is what all of us want here. And we can see that excellence reflected. You know, I have confidence and I feel very proud knowing that my children will go to school, that they will be cared for, that they will be supported, and that they will be educated by some of the most wonderful people in our community. We can also see the strength through our academic excellence in our schools, through the world-leading retention rates at post-primary level and the number of students that go on to further and higher education. We see the excellence in how our students perform in international rankings. If you look at PISA, Irish students are the best in the EU and OECD in terms of our reading. We're significantly above the OECD average in maths and science, and this is a testament again to the quality of our teachers, and this is a testament to each and every one of you in this room. So I think everybody should be incredibly proud of the work that you do in shaping our current and our future generations, and there's always ways in which we can improve. I think we all agree with that, but I'm acutely aware that if we are to bring about the kind of societal change and the transformation that only education can bring, we have to look beyond the CAO points, and I fully agree with you on that. We have to look beyond league tables, which have been an absolute failure in other countries and which will never be part of the education agenda in this country, and I'm absolutely committed to working with you to make sure that we realise that. All children And I also want to make this point: all children and young people deserve to be safe, deserve to be warmly supported according to their needs so that they can reach their full potential. Too many children in the world are living in poverty. Too many children are experiencing war and upheaval from the safe haven of their homes and their communities. And in particular, it's like so many of you, I think of the children in Gaza who are living through absolute hell, who are living in unimaginable pain, hunger, starvation, loss, suffering. And I think of the late Pope Francis, who phoned, as we know and have come to know, Gaza's Holy Family Parish, his own community, every single evening to check in on them and to show and to offer his support. And I think his views were clear as well. War is a defeat. Make no mistake, what we are seeing on our screens, what we are seeing in our televisions, on our phones, is a war on children that is unfolding before our very eyes. And this government will do everything that we can to ensure a permanent ceasefire, to ensure hostages are released, but above all, that our young people are protected and what is happening, this barbarity, that it ends. As Minister for Education, I intend to implement a major programme of work to tackle educational disadvantage. I've made no secret of the fact that this is an area I will absolutely prioritise in my time as Minister. And this is not to start from scratch. What I want to do is build on the fantastic work that is already happening in so many of our schools, in so many of our communities, the length and breadth of this country. There's over 260,000 young students, young people who are supported through our DESH programme, 1,200 post-primary schools, 180 million being invested every year. And that is making a difference. We know that the gap between children who are in DESH schools and non-DESH schools is reducing, but we need to do more. And I want to do everything that I can working with you to achieve that. That's why at the end of this year, I'll publish and set out a new DESH programme. I won't wait till the end of the year to start implementing changes, but we need to make sure that we have a very clear pathway as to what more we can do to support those who are most at risk of educational disadvantage. That's building on the positive work that's happening to date, that's identifying where necessary new measures that we can take, and in particular it's focusing on those who are most at risk. And I've listened very carefully to the calls for and the need for a DESH Plus programme. I've had the pleasure of meeting already with a number of principals, of teachers, of coordinators and school leaders to set out how we can implement a new DESH Plus programme, making sure that students who are experiencing trauma in their lives, be it intergenerational trauma, be it more recent trauma, that first and foremost that trauma is addressed. Because how do we expect and how can we ask young people to come to school, to learn, to achieve their full potential if we're not addressing the root causes of so many of the challenges that they're facing? So I'm absolutely committed to not just building on the success and the positive work of the DESH programme, but making sure that we introduce a new DESH Plus, but also that we reach the students who are not in our DESH schools, that we acknowledge the fact that there are many students who do not get those supports and services. How do we reach them and how do we get them in the schools and at the time that's needed? And this is an absolute priority for me. Key to this is also attendance. If children are not in school, how do we support them? And I think there's been a really worrying trend, as we all can see post-COVID, the fact that we've seen an increase in the number of students that are missing more than 20 days. In fact, again, in DESH schools, it's over 40% of students in post-primary are missing more than 20 days. That's almost every second child missing more than 20 days. This is not acceptable to any of us. And I think we need to look and see what more we can do. There's really important measures that are already in place. There's really important structures that are already in place through our coordination teams. How do we build on that? How do we access the data that is absolutely key here as well to put in place the positive changes to reduce this worrying trend? What I intend to do is bring measures to government in the very near future to expand and strengthen the measures to address the problems that exist, but also to examine how youth services can be integrated even further. And this is an area that I'm really keen to progress. Youth has not come into the Department of Education yet, but in the coming weeks, it will be part and parcel of the work that I'm doing. So how do we make sure that our formal structures are very much aligned with those informal supports and services that are already assisting our young people? So it's not just during the school hours, but that you are supported in your work outside of school hours, at weekends and at other times, to make sure that we are providing that year-round support for our students. And this is absolutely essential, not just around attendance, but also in supporting those, as I've said, who are most at risk of disadvantage. As you know, the majority of young people and children are supported, and those with special educational needs are supported to attend mainstream school with their peers. About 97% of our students attend mainstream. And I want to take this opportunity to sincerely thank each and every one of you for the huge amount of work that is done in our schools in supporting those with additional needs and working with our special education teachers and working with our SNAs to support these students. It is absolutely vital that we provide options for our students, because the more teachers, the more parents, and the more students that I talk to, what works for one person might be different to another. So while we need to ensure that for the most part students are supported in mainstream, are supported with their peers, we absolutely have to acknowledge that there is an increased need for special education classrooms, that there is an increased need for special schools, and it's about providing those options, those opportunities for each and every one of our students. We have 3,330 special classes already educating over 20,500 young people. Over a third of these are at post-primary level, which brings us to just under 1,100 post-primary schools. Of course, in the coming years, we want to increase that further, that there would be 4 classrooms per each school, and I acknowledge that this is a huge change, that this is a huge move forward, but we have done so much positive work to date. So many of you in this room have ensured that that progress has been made, and it's about making sure that we can go even further, because the more young people that we welcome into our schools, you're transforming lives, you're transforming families, you're benefiting children both inside and outside of school. And again, I want to sincerely thank you for that, and to say that myself, with Minister Moynihan, and indeed all of government, we will do everything possible to support you and to ensure that you have the resources to support our young people, because I'm listening and it's very clear that that is one of the challenges that you're facing, making sure it's not just the bricks and mortar in the classrooms. They're essential in providing those school places, but you have the supports and the resources to assist you in the work that is already underway. That's why I've set out very clearly that I will establish a new national therapy service for our schools. And I think it is so important that at the earliest stage possible, young people are getting access to the therapies that they need in the places that they spend so much of their time surrounded by their peers. And that's why this education system and this therapy service will focus on rolling out not just in special schools, that's to start with, but across our special classrooms and in our mainstream settings, occupational therapists, speech and language therapists, and that these therapies are getting directly to the children, that it's in the classroom, in the environment, supported by their teachers, and that their parents are very much part of that overall process. I'm not blind to the fact that we need to make sure we have the resources there to be able to enact this, and that's why the programme for government very clearly sets out that we will then double the number of places in our universities to make sure that we have more speech and language therapists, more occupational therapists, and more therapists overall coming through the system to support this development, and to collaborate and to support and to work with our colleagues in children and in health as well. In seeking to grow and to develop the workforce of our future, we have to consider the strengths and indeed the challenges that are being faced by our teachers and other staff right now, so that as we plan for the future, as we look beyond the next few years, that we are building on those strengths and that we are addressing those challenges. That is why I've announced some of the measures and have taken some of those measures this week, because I've listened very carefully to some of the challenges that you have identified. While I haven't all addressed them all yet, obviously I'm 12 weeks in, so give me a bit more time. But what I've announced this week really is with an ambition to try and address the issue around teacher supply. To make sure that we encourage more young people into the profession, to make sure that we support the teachers who are there, and of course that we encourage those who have moved abroad to come home and to teach in our schools. That's why new teachers following their DRIHID who have taught for 1 year and successfully interviewed for that post in that school the following year will immediately get offered that permanent contract at the start of the year. I really hope that this will ensure that young people have that sense of structure and that sense of security much earlier in their career. And what I'm very clear is that we need to work with all of our stakeholders to develop this new agreement and to make sure that it works, and that the current practices and measures that are already in place, that they are not impacted by this. I want to ensure that this is a positive and that there are no changes that would negate that. To further assist with teacher supply challenges, I'll also work with the Teaching Council on proposals to introduce and to enable eligible teachers who who have qualified outside of Ireland to apply for registration and to complete their induction requirement here. This is a common sense solution, and again, I think it's an important step in encouraging more teachers to work and to start their careers here in Ireland, and I hope that this will be in place in the coming months. We do have 78,000 qualified teachers working in Ireland at the moment. About 35,000 of those are in post-primary schools, and I want to build on that positive momentum. We've seen an increase in the number of students applying to become teachers in recent years. We've seen an increase in the number of teachers who are registered with the Teaching Council, and I want to see more. I acknowledge that there are certain areas and certain subjects where it's particularly challenging for schools and for principals and for the whole community, and so we need to do everything that we can to support and to increase that overall attraction to the profession. Measures introduced in recent budgets, the STEM bursary, the PME fund refund scheme, the expansion of upskilling programmes, again, these are all to support the workforce and planning for teachers and SNAs. And I really do hope that they reflect and they show you the commitment that is here in this government to ongoing investment in the education system to address teacher supply. But despite all of these, what I'm saying here today is I want to do more. Despite the announcements this week, I want to do more, and I will do more, and I'm working very actively and engaging with my department to make sure that we can do more to provide that support. In line with that, my department will lead a workforce development plan which will look at the more immediate actions as well as a medium to longer term outlook to make the teaching profession more sustainable, more agile and a much more attractive career. I'm also supported, and to your point, Donald, to make sure that we address the issues around workload, that we continue to reinstate the positions and the posts of responsibility and build on the progress I think that has been made in recent years, and I appreciate you would like to see that move forward, but it is my ambition and my intention in the years ahead to make sure that we support our principals, our leaders, our teachers at every level within our school and that we can make even further progress in terms of the posts of responsibility. In terms of the parental leave, this is something that is being looked at the moment, but I can be very clear in saying that I've heard you and I understand the ambition here in making sure that there is that work-life balance, that young families are supported in the work that they do and that we try and get that right. For teachers already supporting a diversity of children in their classrooms every day, I'm also asking the Workforce Development Action Group to look at, as a priority, designing high priority modules in special education to support teachers' professional learning journey. And I think that this will complement the work that is being done and that I've asked the Teaching Council to engage in to make sure that all future graduates have a mandatory special education placement as part of their initial teacher training. It is absolutely essential that there is no differentiation between education, whether it's special education, whether it's additional needs education, that every single child is supported and that teachers are given the resources at the earliest stage possible. So as part of this work, the Teaching Council is engaging in a survey across all of our ITE providers to try and gain a better and a deeper understanding of what the current landscape is on school placement provision in special education settings, what it looks like, and obviously the results of this will develop a guidance note for higher education institutions. This will issue later in the year around an assessed student placement period, and this is with the view to make sure that this can be implemented from September 2026. We also need to provide more training and more support. And I'm very conscious, again, from my conversations with teachers, with school leaders, that while it's absolutely vital that we provide the initial teacher education, it is equally as important that teachers are supported throughout their careers. And that is where the design of high-quality modules in special education to support teachers in their professional learning journeys are key, but also making sure that you can access that training, that you have the time and the ability to upskill and to make sure that you can provide the best support for your students, because again, I know that's exactly what everybody wants. In terms of curriculum reform, and to turn to curriculum reform, just to start with the junior cycle, if I could. The changes that I've made today, they have come about because I've listened. I've listened to what you have said and your members and other stakeholders. I've listened to students. I've listened to parents when they've said very clearly the effect that it is having on students and teacher morale in terms of the overall attainment. And what I want is to make sure that students' results and grades reflect the work that they do throughout the year. And while this will leave the bands, I'm feel broad, because obviously the focus and the intention was always to make sure that this was not just solely focused on exams, but I believe that this will support young people and not leave those at a disadvantage. And I'm happy to say that the State Examinations Commission have said that for the 73,000 students who will be sitting their exams in the coming weeks, this will be able to come into effect. I think, as I said, this will more accurately reflect the really great work that's been done by students, but also by our teachers, but will remain sufficiently broad to make sure that there is focus on learning throughout their entire junior cycle. Early enactment reviews have been undertaken for many of the subjects when it comes to the reform, and while I'm announcing the change today, specifically around the bands, I will not hesitate to implement further changes if they are needed in terms of the overall experience, in terms of the overall outcome for students and teachers, and I've already written to the NCCA emphasising this. What I also intend is that any changes to senior cycle will include early enactment reviews at the earliest stages possible, because I'm very open if something is not working, if we need to change something, that we change it. There's no point in letting something progress. When I met many of you, and indeed I would have spoke to many of you at my first engagement in Croke Park at the Senior Cycle Conference, I said that I would work with you on Leaving Cert reform, and that stands true now as it did then. I also said that Leaving Cert has served us well for many, many years, and I think it served all of us. It certainly served me well in my former school in St. Joseph's in Mercy in Navan. And I agree with you, President. Let me be clear, and I've engaged with many companies, many multinational corporations and associations, and yes, while a tax measure might be somewhat of a draw, there are many other countries that they could go to where they would get a better preference. They are attracted to Ireland, they are drawn to Ireland because of the fantastic workforce, because of the highly skilled and educated workforce that we have. But what they're also saying to me, and what they're also saying to government, is that the world is changing, and that the advancements in technology, the changes in jobs, I said this a number of weeks ago as well, the jobs that young people will be working in the next couple of years, they haven't even been created yet, such as the pace at which we are moving. So it's absolutely essential that we ensure that young people are equipped to deal with the changing world that they're living in, the changing environment, and in particular the changing workforce that they are moving out into. And I believe that there is real momentum in the senior cycle redevelopment and the reform, and I believe that so much of what has happened to date has only come into effect because of the fact that you as an association and your stakeholder partners have engaged in the way that you have with the department. We can see that in the progress that's been made in a number of areas, in the cycle level 1 and level 2 learning programmes introduced in schools, importantly as well the SEC clarifying and certifying these programmes next year, making sure that students with additional educational needs will graduate with their peers. It's so important. We've 50,000 students now enrolled in the Leaving Cert vocational programme, 60,000 students doing transition year for the first time, and an integrated set of results for Leaving Cert applied students, which was provided last year for the first time. And the next step is to move on this tranche, and I'm absolutely clear, I am absolutely adamant in what I say. I will work with you and I will support you and I will do everything that I can to make sure that this is a success. That is my only goal and my objective here, to make sure that I work with you and that I listen to the concerns that you've raised. When it comes to training, well, a huge amount of teachers I know have taken up training, about 26,000 to date. So it's about 5,500 have signed up for training after the Easter conference, following on from the publication of the 72 papers. There's more that we need to do, and that's why that in-person training in September on the AACs in particular will be absolutely essential. I'm very aware of the fact that there is a concern around science and the concern around the fact that there may not be the equipment, or that schools feel that they don't have the resources that they need. The 12 million fund that was provided initially, I want to do more. I'm supposed to say to you very clearly, I want to make sure that every single school, irrespective of where they are, of where you are, that you have the resources, that you have the supports that you need to be able to support your students. And we need to make sure, in terms of AI, that every clarity that needs to be provided for you, but also for students, that that is done. The SEC published guidance back in 2023. But I am very clear that that needs to be updated, and that's why my department is working to make sure that there is even further guidance outlining how we can work with students, because I think we all agree AI is here to stay. It's part and parcel of how our young people are learning. It's integrated into so much of what we do, but we have to make sure that our young people continue to learn and that you, as educators, are able to identify where it's not being used in the most appropriate way. So I do want to thank the ASTI, I want to thank your leadership for their engagement over the last number of weeks. I have asked you to engage with me to see what more I can do to support you in making sure that this rollout is a success, and above all, making sure that students benefit. This is the overall objective here, that students are prepared for the life ahead and that they benefit from any of these changes. And I just want to thank you and to say that I hope that we will be able to conclude those discussions and that engagement in the coming weeks, in fact, in early May. In terms of the current students, I just want to clarify, and I suppose it's something that's been raised with me, in making sure that the adjustments to examinations and the assessment arrangements for Leaving Cert, which have been in place in recent years and that apply to this year's Leaving Cert, that they will continue to apply for the class of 2026. So as we know, whether it's the 10 straw pictures for the overall examination or any other changes that have been made, they will continue in place, not just for this year's students, but for the following on as well. In terms of supporting and protecting our Irish language, the cúpla focail raw, faoi cuasaí Gaeilge, I'm absolutely committed to publishing a number of new strategies in the coming months. This will build on the really positive and important work of the Gaeltacht Recognition Scheme, but in particular I'll be focusing my attention on the Irish medium schools outside of the Gaeltacht and also those who are teaching Irish in English medium schools. I also want to just reference maybe, as your President has, the issue when it comes to online and young people. We've talked a lot about technology and advancements in AI, but you know, one of the things that is most prevalent and in most conversations in people's households at the moment is the impact of social media and the impact of technology on young people's lives. And I think we all agree that it has, for the most part, been very positive for all of us, the way we can communicate, the way we engage with each other, the way that we work, but it also comes with certain detriments as well. And just to reassure you, this government is already making changes to make sure that we can not just support young people, that we can hold our social media companies to account, that where they don't comply, that where they allow harmful content, that where they don't support young people on their platforms, where they don't comply with their own codes of behaviour, not only will they be called out, but they will be fined significant sums of money. But I'm also conscious that we all have a role to play. So while we are asking you, whether it's through the SPHE curriculum reform, which is obviously coming ahead in the next year or so, that we all have a role to play. And as a young parent of 2 young boys, I'm very clear that it's not just teachers who should be responsible for protecting and supporting young people online. We as government have a key role in that. And I think we all as parents as well have a key role in making sure that we provide that protection. Finally, and if I could just conclude on this, because it is key to everything that we are talking about here, it's the need to make sure that you have the finances that you need to run your schools, to provide the education that you do, to develop in the various different areas that have been outlined. And I am determined to make sure that over the next number of years, the funding that is being provided, be it through capitation, be it through our ICT grants, whether it's minor works, summer works, any of the programmes that are there for our schools, that they are provided to you, that where I can, that they increase and that we support you and increase the overall funding year on year. I can't negotiate here at the table, I can't negotiate outside of budget, but I can give you my absolute commitment and assurances that this will be an absolute priority for me to make sure that you have the resources, the supports, the funding, everything that you need to continue the fabulous work that you do. So in conclusion, again, I just want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you sincerely for the very warm welcome that I have received. It is so important that those who are at the heart of our education system, that you are acknowledged. And I want to thank you sincerely for the work that you do. As I said at the outset, I think we've all benefited from the wonderful education system that we have in this country. I know I certainly have, and I feel very lucky to be even a small part of planning for our future. Finally, when it comes to looking beyond the next 2 or 3 years, in the coming weeks I'll be announcing a new education convention. We had a positive and a really important exchange just almost 30 years ago, setting out a vision for education in this country. And I think it's time that we set that out again, making sure that our teachers, that our students, that our young people, that all of our community are involved in making sure that our education system is the best that it can be. And I really look forward to working with each and every one of you as we set out that ambition in the time ahead. Thank you very much.